Join our community by subscribing. Every click helps us share more stories like this one. The introduction. The gentle sound of rustling leaves barely masked the unnerving stillness that blanketed the small town of Riverside Pines. Situated amid sprawling pine forests and winding rivers, the town was known for its picturesque scenery and tight-knit community. But it wasn't the idyllic postcard charm that brought Inspector Anna Langmore back here. It was the echoes of a haunting case that had never reached closure. Years had passed since Jessica Gray, a promising young journalist, vanished without a trace. Her pursuit of a story had unraveled into a chilling mystery, one that had left families shattered and residents paralyzed with fear. In the weeks that followed her disappearance, the search had captivated the nation. But as months turned into years, the attention waned. Cold cases often grew colder, and the glow of once burning hope dimmed to barely a whisper. Langmore stood at the edge of the woods, her hands tucked deep into the pockets of her coat. The air was crisp, tinged with the scent of damp earth and pine. Yet it seemed a stark contrast to the bitterness that brewed within her as she recalled the unanswered questions that plagued her. What had really happened to Jessica? Had she stumbled upon something dangerous, or had someone deliberately silenced her? The verdant tranquility of Riverside Pines belied the darkness that lingered beneath its surface, begging for exposure. The victim. Jessica Gray was not merely a name etched in unsolved case files. She was a vibrant soul known for her insatiable curiosity and undying ambition. Growing up in Riverside Pines, her childhood was enriched by adventure, whether it was exploring hidden trails in the woods or conducting makeshift interviews with her classmates. It was no surprise when her passion for storytelling propelled her onto the journalism track at the local university. Her world blossomed, and soon Jessica found her niche in investigative reporting. Her articles were not just stories, they were revelations, often unearthing truths that others chose to overlook. Friends described her as fearless, a quality that both inspired admiration and invoked worry. Jessica was relentless in her pursuits, a double-edged sword that eventually led her to a tantalizing lead in the small town of secrets buried beneath its pristine surface. As she delved into her work, she began investigating allegations of corruption within the town's administration, unearthing rumors of land deals that seemed too good to be true. The deeper she dug, the more she unearthed whispers of intimidation and threats directed at those who dared to speak against the status quo. There had been moments, friends later recalled, when unease settled in around her, shadows darting across her usually bright demeanor. Days turned into restless nights for Jessica, filled with scribbles and moments of perplexity. Then, just as her investigations began to reveal that dark underbelly, she disappeared. To those who knew her, this was an unthinkable fate. The vibrant journalist who had braved her fears to uncover the truth had vanished, leaving behind an unquenchable thirst for answers and unrelenting anguish for her loved one. The crime scene. It was a chilly morning when Inspector Langmore returned to Riverside Pines after years of distance. The air held an uneasy silence. The remnants of autumn clung stubbornly to the trees, their skeletal branches reaching toward the bleak sky, as if yearning for respite from past shadows. The site of Jessica Gray's last known whereabouts loomed ahead, a secluded area beside the river, where the shimmering water belied the darkness that had unfolded. The crime scene could almost be mistaken for a serene retreat, yet it concealed the tremors of treachery and despair. A narrow dirt path, flanked by overgrown ferns and clusters of granite boulders, lured passers-by with its false promise of beauty. But for those keenly aware of the past, the space radiated a haunting energy, one anchored in unresolved questions and lurking fear. Local authorities had scoured the area extensively after Jessica's disappearance, and press reports detailed the initial investigations, but no clues were ever found. As Langmore stepped onto the ground where Jessica had last been seen, she felt the weight of every investigator who had walked that path, their hopes, their failures, their desires to piece together an unthinkable puzzle. Near the water's edge, thick mud packed down underfoot told the story of search teams having combed the space relentlessly. With each careful step, she took in the distant sound of the river flowing, a monotonous reminder of the time that had passed since that hot July afternoon. Sunlight flickered through the branches, casting spectral shadows that danced over the stones, suggesting that nature had continued to thrive, even as lives remained shattered. With a heavy heart, Inspector Langmore leaned over the bank, searching for any detail that may have been overlooked. It was here, she thought, beneath the whisper of the water, that the answers might begin to reveal themselves. The early investigation. In the immediate aftermath of Jessica Gray's disappearance, the Riverside Pines Police Department launched a fervent investigation, spurred by the urgency of a community that feared the unimaginable. Officer Tom Reynolds, a seasoned detective, took on the case, his instincts honed after years of working in a town where crime was rare but deeply felt. The search began swiftly, with local volunteers rallying around Jessica's family, scouring familiar trails and places she would often visit, a poignant effort bound in desperation. Helicopters flew overhead while canine units scoured the surrounding woods, the echoes of their barks resonating in an atmosphere that hung dense with anxiety and hope. Yet as the initial days unfolded, the search shifted from urgent optimism to a more disheartening reality. Meeting after meeting filled Reynolds' calendar as he sought to piece together Jessica's final day. The police began interviewing her friends and colleagues, looking for insights that could illuminate her state of mind. Conversations often echoed the same sentiment. Jessica had been increasingly agitated, often speaking of unspoken threats tied to her investigations. Among the authorities' preliminary leads were reports from town residents who recalled seeing a black sedan parked near the river on the day of her disappearance. 3 witnesses provided vague descriptions, and yet the details never aligned cleanly each account, warped by the hazy lens of memory. Frustration grew as every piece of evidence led to another dead end. I'm faded. And with it, leads went cold. The case became a bitter reminder of lost potential, a loss that hung heavy in the corridors of the police department. Every missing poster that fluttered desperately on telephone poles symbolized not just a search for Jessica, but a painful reminder of the justice still out of reach. The dead ends. As weeks faded into months, the urgency surrounding Jessica Gray's case subsided, replaced by an unsettling quiet that seemed to settle over Riverside Pines like a shroud. Officer Reynolds continued to sift through the meager evidence remaining, yet each day felt more burdensome than the last. The once invigorating spirit of determination now morphed into a lingering sense of despair. With every lead that unraveled into nothingness, the weight of their collective failure pressed heavily on the departed. One promising tip involved a local who insisted he had spotted Jessica at a diner just outside of town, engaging in an animated conversation with a figure shrouded in shadow. Reynolds tracked down the diner, only to discover that the witness had been drinking heavily that night, and the story quickly lost its credibility. The gallery of blurry security camera footage collected from local gas stations offered little hope, containing only the unremarkable transactions of early morning commuters. Reynolds re-examined every piece of evidence: footprints left on the riverbank, witness statements, even the character of Jessica's known acquaintance See It. The threads always unraveled in unexpected directions. What haunted him most were the unsaid words from Jessica's friends. There were murmurs of unsettling encounters in the weeks before she vanished off, chilling phone calls made in the dead of night in unfamiliar vehicles, lingering too long near her apartment. Each revelation echoed with a sense of lost time, compounded by the knowledge that someone was likely watching her, a sinister presence lurking just beyond the edges of her vibrant life. The community's initial fervor transformed into fatigue, each search event dwindling in numbers as hope ebbed. Still, Officer Reynolds clung tightly to his resolve. The tragedy was no longer merely about a missing girl. It had become a profound question of justice, a silent vow that he would not allow Jessica's story to fade into obscurity. A break in the case. Months passed since the police department first opened the case on Jessica Gray, and hope lingered on a threadbare line until, one crisp November afternoon, everything shifted. The dull monotony of a slow day was pierced by a phone call that rippled through the station like a jolt of electricity. A woman had approached the department, her hands trembling as she recounted a harrowing story that would breathe new life into the investigation. She was a newcomer to Riverside Pines, a woman named Leah, who had recently moved to the area in search of a fresh start. Yet, her quiet life spiraled into chaos when she stumbled upon a disturbing discovery while walking her dog near the river. A hidden clearing, often overlooked, bore the imprint of something unusual: discarded personal belongings that sent chills down her spine. Leah had found a small purse, worn and stained, with a distinctive bumper sticker emblazoned with Jessica's beloved college logo. Instinctively frozen in place, she had felt an ominous foreboding wash over her. Within the purse were scattered, seemingly innocuous items: a hairbrush, a notebook filled with shorthand scrawls, and a distinctive silver locket bearing a photograph of a young woman. Leah took the items to the police, believing they held keys to the mystery that had enshrouded the town for far too long. Inspector Langmore was called to the station, her heart racing as she absorbed the details. She knew this was no ordinary find. This felt like a breadcrumb leading her closer to Jessica's last moments. The locket, she recalled, was a cherished gift from Jessica's mother, a unique piece that would unmistakably connect to her. Could this be the turning tide the investigation desperately needed? With renewed vigor, Langmore directed her team to revisit the clearing where Leah had found the belongings, determined to uncover the truth buried beneath years of uncertainty. The suspect. With new leads invigorating the case, Inspector Langmore assembled her team for a strategic meeting. The unearthed purse and its contents had renewed the urgency for investigation, illuminating a path that could potentially lead to Jessica's former acquaintances. As they dissected the whisk of evidence, one name unfurled ominously: a man who had shadowed Jessica's final days. Mark Travis, a local handyman with an uneasy reputation. Mark was known for his erratic behavior and had been under the police's radar, prior to Jessica's disappearance. A once reliable source of casual labor, whispers surrounded his history with women, a series of relationships tinged with manipulation and control. Long before Jessica vanished, he'd been reported for stalking several women throughout the area. Yet, despite revealing unsettling patterns, he had somehow slipped through their fingers, appearing to elude serious scrutiny. Langmore ordered background checks to be run on him, and as the evidence pooled, it quickly became clear that he had operated in the shadows, living close to the thoughts that consumed Jessica as she voiced her concerns about her investigation. Following a tip, the task force tracked Mark to a nearby bar, where they learned he had been a familiar face within that social scene, appearing increasingly agitated in the weeks preceding Jessica's disappearance. Armed with this knowledge, Langmore and her team prepared an operation to apprehend him for questioning. They needed to gauge his connection to both Jessica and the possessions found in the clearing. Carefully weighing their approach, they remained mindful of the potential for violence. The quiet town of Riverside Pines had been ruptured. It bore the scars of fear and uncertainty, igniting anger in those who had long desired answers. As the investigation closed in on Mark, Langmore felt both the weight of expectation and the chilling possibility that they were perhaps ready to confront the darkness behind Jessica's story. The trial. The atmosphere inside the courthouse was charged with palpable tension as the trial for Mark Travis commenced. The dimly lit room was filled with a mixture of subdued murmurs and the rustle of legal documents. Families, friends, and media alike crowded the benches, all awaiting answers to the questions that had haunted Riverside Pines for years. Inspector Langmore sat in the front row, a steady presence amidst the storm. She had worked tirelessly to bring the case to this moment, piecing together the fragments of Jessica Gray's life and death. Each testimony unfolded like a fragile thread, weaving a tapestry of grief and unresolved anger. The prosecution painted a chilling narrative, drawing on the collected evidence, the purse, the locket, and the disturbing history that hung over Travis. Witnesses recounted sightings of Jessica's increasing unease, while exposing the alarm bells from friends who warned of Mark's unwanted advance. One witness recalled, with trembling voice, the night Jessica confided she felt she was being followed. Her fears echoed in the heart of the courtroom. Travis appeared calm, his posture betraying little as he sat across the room, flanked by his legal team. Defensive maneuvers peppered the proceedings, as his attorney argued for reasonable doubt, attempting to discredit witness testimonies while painting a portrait of a misunderstood man. Yet, the more they pushed, the more the weight of their circumstantial case seemed to tilt against them. As days turned into weeks, the emotional toll mounted. Jessica's family sat quietly, remnants of shattered hope captured in their expressions. They yearned for the truth, a truth that seemed continually out of reach. Officer Reynolds and Langmore exchanged emboldened glances across the courtroom. Both knew the stakes were high. Far beyond the justice for Jessica was for every voice silenced by fear. As Langmore absorbed the unfolding drama, a flicker of determination ignited within her. This trial was more than a quest for justice. It was a stand against the shadows threatening to obscure Jessica's memory. With each passing day, Langmore resolved to ensure that her story would be heard, and if conviction prevailed, perhaps Riverside Pines could start to heal. The aftermath. The verdict reverberated through the courthouse like an echo of long-buried pain. Mark Travis was found guilty on charges of second-degree murder, having been linked irrevocably to the tragic fate of Jessica Gray. Relief flooded the room, entwined with a bittersweet acknowledgement of the void that could never truly be filled. As the gavel fell, a collective breath escaped the hearts of those who had gathered, acknowledging that justice, though delayed, had finally materialized. Inspector Langmore lingered in the courthouse hall, the weight of the trial still heavy on her shoulders. The sense of closure brought a comfort. Yet the many faces she encountered revealed a lingering sadness. As Jessica's family embraced, tears of both grief and gratitude flowed. They now had answers. The absence of their daughter and sister would always remain a haunting specter. In the weeks that followed, Riverside Pines began to chart a new course. Communities came together, sparked by the resilience shown in the face of tragedy. The local newspaper started a tribute column dedicated to Jessica, featuring her articles and highlighting her aspirations, spreading her voice beyond the boundaries of the town. Yet, the healing was neither swift nor linear. The fear that had once encapsulated the town began to dissipate, slowly replaced by a determination to hold on to the lessons learned. Town meetings sprouted, discussions centered around safety and vigilance, with community members committed to ensuring that no one would face darkness alone again. For Langmore, the trial had been a reminder of the raw fragility of life. It reignited her commitment to justice, pushing her to immerse herself deeper into her role as an investigator. The scars left by Jessica's case would linger in her mind, an indelible mark of the responsibility she bore in an unyielding vow to protect the stories of those who could no longer speak for themselves. In a world where shadows still lingered ominously, Riverside Pines slowly emerged into the light, striving to honor Jessica's memory. With every step forward, a town no longer defined by tragedy, but by resilience and hope. Reflection. Months passed since the trial concluded, and Riverside Pines breathed more freely. Yet the shadows of Jessica's story continued to resonate deeply within Inspector Langmore. During quiet moments in her office, she found herself retracing steps she thought she had concluded the memories of Jessica, her laughter, her ambitions, and the tragedy that befell her played in her mind like a film on rewind. Langmore often visited the riverbank where Jessica was last seen, drawn by both grief and gratitude. Each visit imbued her with a sense of purpose, a reminder of why she chose this field of battle against darkness and silence. She felt an emotional tether to Jessica, as if every ripple in the water carried the echoes of the vibrant life that had once flowed so freely. Through reflection, Langmore embraced her drive to seek justice for others who had faced similar fate. She began to dedicate her time to community outreach, sharing Jessica's story and the lessons learned from it, the importance of vigilance and voice in the face of threats, the significance of connections in a world that could be isolating. As a community, Riverside Pines began to foster an environment rooted in compassion, ensuring that every missing person would not be forgotten. The journey was far from over. It was a purpose fueled by pain, yet softened by hope. Langmore took solace in knowing that despite the darkness, the light of Jessica Gray's legacy would shine on.